Thank you so much. And I feel very honored to be here at the Kennedy Center and to speak on the rights of nature. I'm not a lawyer, so I have my notes just so I don't mess it up. I'm not even really an environmentalist. I'm a filmmaker, a photographer, a social justice advocate, and a human rights advocate. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about how do we change the world in the way that it needs to be changed. The rights of nature is one of many tools that we can use as a way to wake up humanity and help all of the people who are doing the extraordinary work to get the attention and the support that's needed to save our planet. Is from the Amazon. I just got back from 2 months there with an incredible indigenous tribe called the Puyanawas. And I'm going to share a video from my homeland.
The epidemic is spreading all over. This part of the city is even worse. Everybody's panicking. We still wait for some help.
Must contain the situation.
Mama?
It's a total mess. They can die for all I care. It's not my problem.
Take them immediately.
They have to do more to eradicate the epidemic. Honestly, at this point, it's like the air is contagious.
So that film is called The Girl Epidemic. And it's about human trafficking, it's about child labor, it's about the loss of life. We have millions of girls that are missing in Asia from the censuses. It's what I've been focused on prior to my work in the Amazon and with nature and ecosystems, and green fuel, and I'll get to that in a moment. But what has that got to do with the rights of nature? To me, the rights of nature are human rights. People often say we can't afford to worry about the rights of nature because we have so many issues that are human rights-based. We have these wars, we have all of the problems that humanity faces. And what we forget is that all of those things will become infinitely worse if we don't focus on the rights of nature. When I was in the Amazon, I interviewed with Carlos Nobre, one of the Nobel Prize winners on science research about the importance of the Amazon. And his research shows we have 8 to 10 years left before the Amazon becomes a savanna, before we lose untold numbers of species. We don't know how many because we have no idea how many species are actually in the Amazon currently and in the other rainforests of the world. We're just at the beginning of our understanding of what our planet holds. You know, we talk a lot about the oceans, we talk about outer space and all of the life that might be there. There's so much life that is all around us. We're constantly discovering new species. So I was in Singapore, actually, a city that has some of the smallest amounts of nature in the world. And even there, we found a number of new species in 24 hours of research that we did. So there is so much to be found. There's so much for human interest. And so I'm going to share with you a few different approaches that I've taken to raising awareness of issues that are important. And then I'll share with you a little bit of the new project that's still in development. Oh, that's a little bit of my backstory. Working with a lot of celebrities, a lot of brands. I was discovered by David Bowie. And I've figured out a few years ago how to combine the celebrity work that I was known for as a photographer with the work that really matters, which is the human rights, social justice, and rights of nature work. So this was my first exploration of that with a campaign against AIDS in Africa, which managed to recruit 25 celebrities, including Kim Kardashian, Lady Gaga, Justin Timberlake, wonderful people, and we put them in coffins. so that people could recognize themselves in this dire image of what happens if we don't support issues like AIDS in Africa and provide antiretroviral treatment. And we were able to raise 1.8 billion impressions with this series. And a series we'd done before with people in Africa, with the actual victims who are suffering, didn't get very much attention. But combining forces is really the key to getting the attention that we need. I'm going to show you another little clip, which is also has no nature in it.
Valentine told me how he feels. If all the world were under his heels. Valentine, Valentine, it's in his smiling hand, it's in his icy heart, it's happening today. Valentine, Valentine, it's happening today. Valentine, Valentine.
So I was fortunate to learn from David Bowie. He discovered my work early on as a photographer and then gave me my first directing opportunity for this music video called Valentine's Day that's actually about high school mass shootings. And he went into the mind of a mass shooter to look at it from a different perspective, from the perspective of the perpetrator. And it was a very interesting experiment because he didn't want to glorify violence, obviously. And we know that with issues like mass shootings, the last thing you want to do is glorify the killer. So there was a lot of subtlety involved in trying to get this message out. It's an interesting experiment because as we look at humanity as the destroyers of nature that we are all mass killers from the perspective of the natural world. And so this idea that our young people are embodying that, when you look at it from the nature perspective, it all starts to make a little more sense in a really terrifying way. So for me, spending time with, this is Beatrice Finn, who's the Nobel Prize winner for her work against nuclear weapons, which to me have a great relationship, obviously, with our weaponized schools and our mass armaments that we have within our rights structures in this country and others. So going to the Amazon, seeing the effects of humanity's need for resources, our insatiable hunger, seeing the forest still on fire that our indigenous people hold sacred. This gentleman is from the Puyanawa tribe, and their perspective was so eye-opening because they have gone back to nature. They themselves were imprisoned, enslaved 100 years ago. And for almost a century, they lived as we do. They lived in cities. They were forced, when they were enslaved, they were forced not to use their language, their culture. They were forced to not marry within their own people. And so really a genocide by whatever other name is still a really terrible, traumatic situation that they are in. But 25 years ago, they decided, or half of the tribe decided to return to their traditional ways, to return to nature. And so this is Puyanawa. He's the spiritual leader of the tribe. And when I arrived in the Amazon, he said something very beautiful. He said, nature herself has invited you here. She's called you here. And this tribe has been reaching out to people all around the world with this idea that they are just agents of nature. And if you answer this call, you're answering the call of nature herself. So this film is called Heroes of Regeneration. It's still in progress. We've shot a great deal, but it's in the finishing phases. So I'll show you a few clips from it. It's really dealing with this idea that nature does not need us. We need nature. So when we talk about the rights of nature, again, if nature doesn't actually need us, we're really talking about human rights in a different way. One of the fascinating aspects that I learned from the indigenous tribe is this one, that health and well-being occur when our inner nature and outer nature are in harmony. And we look at studies, psychologists show that your well-being, your chance of suicide, your chance of depression are all highly dependent on your exposure to nature on a regular basis. The same thing with medical doctors have shown our physical health depends on our closeness to nature. There is a very clear correlation between being alienated from nature and having a higher risk of mortality, both mental and physical causes. So I think the indigenous tribe are onto something. Consumerism is consuming us. Another fascinating perspective that they shared. And the idea that we no longer need weapons to fight what ails us. We need togetherness, collaboration. And it was really beautiful to see that in a tribe where, of course, they carry their bows and arrows. Weaponization was always a part. These are not pacifists that are sitting under a tree waiting for whatever might happen to happen. They have been very much engaged in their own protection and taking care of their community. But they recognize that weapons are a symbol. They're no longer of value in a world where pressing a little button, we can destroy most of the planet, which is our current situation of presidential authority that this country seems to appreciate and allow for. That was something they were quite concerned with, knowing the irrationality of humanity. It's something that I was talking with Moran a lot about. So this beautiful indigenous woman and her child, she shared with us the idea that nature is our greatest teacher, and our children teach us, as well as our elders. Having that right relationship with nature, with the generations, the awareness that we are the ancestors of our future descendants, and we carry this knowledge through. Really beautiful ideas that they shared. So I'm a doer, and faced with the challenges of how do we help these indigenous people to protect these lands. So when they were removed from their lands by enslavers, those lands still are owned by the descendants, by the grandson, actually, of the person who enslaved them. The town they live in is still named after him, and they all bear his name on their passport. So only now they're able to start changing their names and carve a separate identity from their enslaver. They were really excited to collaborate with science and technology. So I brought together, with a nonprofit that I work with, Shakti Regeneration Institute, we brought together 120 scientists, and we all went to Singapore as part of the X Prize Rainforest to look at how science and technology and indigenous knowledge can all learn from each other and work together to quantify biodiversity. Because you can't really save or protect a forest if you don't know what's in it. From a legal perspective, you need to be able to itemize, quantify. That's what our world is based on, right? The numerical basis. What's the percentage of species loss? And speaking with the indigenous people, they are keenly aware of the species they're losing on a daily basis. But the rest of us, we want to see those numbers. So we went on this really extraordinary trip to Singapore to look at different ways of quantifying this. This is some of the indigenous leaders in the lab using eDNA, looking through the microscopes with the team. It was really a fascinating experiment. And then I also brought them to the Science Summit at the United Nations with experts of all kinds. And we had a really extraordinary conversation about different perspectives on protecting nature and protecting our climate. And so there's another image of the tribe who are here with us in spirit. And I want to come back to this idea of the rights of nature, this legal instrument that enables nature, wholly or in part, ecosystems or species-wide, to have inherent rights and legally to have the same protection as people and corporations. It's the idea that ecosystems and species have the legal right to exist, to thrive, and to regenerate. I find that definition so fascinating because corporations, I mean, they have rights. We have no issues with that. So when people say, well, how can inanimate objects have rights? How can you have the rights of trees or rivers or animals? Well, we allow corporations, which certainly it's questionable whether they have a conscience. Certainly they could if they chose to, but that's usually not written into their corporate rules. They have rights. So when we look at the rights of nature and we look at what does it take to actually protect them, I want to just share with you a very exciting idea. We have everything that we need today to fight climate change, to protect ecosystems from their collapse, which if we don't make changes, we're looking at 8 to 10 years before we are losing massive amounts of ecosystems, which really means that we will no longer be able to produce food because all of our pollinators, they're all tied into these ecosystems. And as we look at climate, we look at these longer multi-decades effects, we often forget what happens when we lose our ecosystems. There is an immediate loss of humanity on a massive scale. But we have solar power, we have green hydrogen, we have wind power, we have all these technologies. So there's so much investment going into creating the new silver bullet. What's going to solve this? But we have all of those answers already. It's just a matter of the will to make these changes. And people often argue that, oh, we're going to have to give things up. We're going to have to stop driving or stop using electricity. That's not the case. We just need to change our sources of fuel. And of course, there are many things we need to do, but that's one of the biggest ones that we can do, and we can do it right away. The time for action has long passed, but we still can make enormous strides if we embrace these technologies. And it's a cost-effective reality. Embracing solar energy, LFP battery storage, green hydrogen production. These are paths forward that can massively impact our climate situation. And of course, climate is the main driver of ecosystems loss currently. Certainly burning them down and is not a great idea. And if we can stop doing that, and if we can slow down our climate catastrophe, nature will thrive again.